One of the greatest games in National Football League history, full of legend and lore, is the 1934 National Football League Championship game, one that the New York Giants participated in. And in this New York Giants 100th anniversary special, we're going to celebrate that game, the Sneakers game, and its history, coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another edition of our New York Giants celebration, their 100th season in 2024, and we are all over it, telling you about some of the greatest players, games, and seasons of the New York Football Giants and celebrating their great history. Today, we go to one of their championship seasons. The defending champion Chicago Bears, a team that dominated the NFL in 1934, went undefeated in the regular season and were formidable opponents that the Giants faced. December 9th, 1934 at the Polo Grounds in New York City, the Sneakers game is what the National Football League Championship has been fondly branded as. This was a rematch of two teams that played in the 1933 League Championship contest, as we talked about in an earlier episode, and the Chicago Bears and the New York Giants were foes in this game once again. The Bears entered the game as the favorites. After all, they had not only lost a game all season long, but they had beaten the Giants twice earlier. A November 4th matchup of the two squads at Wrigley Field saw the home team dismantle New York 27-7. The two franchises met again 2 weeks later at the Polo Grounds, and the Bears won out again in a much closer 10-9 decision. The Bears had a roster of all-stars and future Hall of Famers, experienced veterans like Red Grange, George Musso, Walt Kiesling, Link Lyman, and Bronco Nagurski complemented the athleticism of Keith Molesworth and rookie Beatty Feathers, Bill Carr, and Jack Manders. Yes, George Halas had put together an extremely talent-laden roster. The Giants countered with a strong supporting cast of their own, of Red Badgrove, Ray Flaherty, Mel Hein, Ed Danowski, and Ken Strong, but ran the gambit with a disappointing 8-5 regular season mark. New York had suffered two season opening losses, one to Green Bay and the other to Detroit, backing into the season 0-2 before rattling off four straight. The Giants did just enough to win the East, outlasting the 6-6 Boston right to play in this December 9th National Football League Championship game. The Giants were quite confident entering the contest. Though blown out in Chicago earlier in the season, they played the Bears almost even on the Polo Grounds home field. Coach Owen had to carefully search for an edge to give his team an advantage and a fighting chance against the undefeated champs. Ultimately, this leg up would reveal itself on game day. The game was played in New York as the NFL practiced an alternate rotation of East and West Conference's home field advantage for the title game participants. You may remember from a previous discussion that the 1933 game was played at Wrigley Field when the two teams squared off. Weather in New York City in early December is always a factor to consider, and in this case, the rain the night before froze as temperatures plummeted well below 32 degrees into the teens, leaving the Polo Grounds turf and every other outdoor surface in the Big Apple more like a hockey rink than a gridiron battlefield. A sparse crowd of over 35,000 braved the elements to watch the contest in the frozen stands with these two behemoths of football in the National Football League. The early portion of the contest went as the odds makers calculated. Molesworth was a handful for the Giants defenders as he and Nagurski slashed and pounded the football for chunks of yardage in the first half. Chicago's bright young star Beatty Feathers was injured and unavailable for this big game, but Bronco eventually lumbered his way over the goal line and Chicago jumped out to an early 10-3 lead by intermission. John Mara, the Giants' treasure, noticed that the turf of the Polo Grounds was practically a sheet ice just hours before kickoff. Mara let the coaching staff, including team captain Ray Flaherty, know about the field conditions. Flaherty's thoughts returned to a game from his past that he remembered where he and his Gonzaga teammates had played in similar icy conditions, where they took off their cleats and put on basketball shoes to try and gain better traction. Flaherty wanted the Giants to take the same action. However, since it was Sunday, there were no sporting goods stores open in the area. That's when some networking and some true home field advantage was played out. The Giants equipment personnel hurried to nearby Manhattan College to borrow the basketball team's footwear. Both teams initially struggled with traction, but head coach Steve Owens' secret strategy and the Giants' determination turned the tide. At halftime, it was a time for the footwear revision, and Owens' receivers and backs donned the limited number of sneakers that they had on loan from Manhattan College, gaining a significant advantage over their opponents. At the onset of the second half, things got a little bit worse for the Giants, though, as the visitors padded the lead with a field goal and went up 13-3. Ken Strong's talents were then shown bright that day, even though he had been banged up due to some rough injury-plagued season. And star end Red Badgrow, another offensive weapon, had suffered a season-ending wound earlier in the season, preventing him from playing in the title tilt. He was the Giants' weapon of choice, was Strong, for much of the game. But for the first three quarters, the Bears' defense limited his effectiveness. Ken Strong and the Giants finally caught a break in the third, but it was almost a heartbreaking. Quarterback Ed Donowski stepped back to pass for the Giants, and as the New York team drove deep into Chicago territory. The quarterback's toss seemed destined for glory until Chicago's Carl Broombaugh stepped in front of the Donowski pass and apparently appeared to intercept the ball. However, New York receiver Ike Frakian swiped the ball out of the Bears defender's mitts and strolled into the end zone to close the gap on the Chicago lead, avoiding disaster and making it a 13-10 game early in the fourth quarter. After that, it was all Giants, and they were literally and figuratively finding their footing as the rubber-soled footwear and a suction cup design to grab the hardwoods, hold on the hardwoods, gave traction to the New York bunch that wore them. It was all Giants the rest of the way as Ken Strong crossed the stripe twice, first in a 41-yard touchdown scramper to pay dirt, followed by another of his own and a Donowski touchdown run as an insurance policy. The G-men scored 4 touchdowns in the final stanza, surprising the Chicago Bears with a 30-13 Giants comeback victory rout. For their efforts, the players on the Giants received a check of $621.03 each, while the Bears players licked their wounds on a long train ride back to the Windy City, holding their pay receipts that were just over $400 in value for each. Little did anyone know that game would go down in history, not just for the Giants' victory, but also for the innovative strategy that it took the change in course of the football game and called it the sneakers game. Very appropriate. We hope you enjoyed this little bit of football history and New York Giants 100 celebration, and we hope you join us back each and every time we have a new episode coming out. You can hit the subscribe button on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast provider, and get some more Giants history all through 2024 every Monday with pigskindispatch.com. Till next time, everybody, have a great gridiron day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.